Buying off the plan has a certain allure.
Yeah, Josh, it's like having a baby. You're there from the inception. It's all pretty exciting until stuff goes wrong.
So looking past the facade, what are the big mistakes when buying off the plan? It's Josh and Jaden here, mortgage brokers with Hunter Galloway.
The home for home buyers across Australia.
And in this video, we're gonna walk you through the 6 big mistakes to avoid when buying off the plan, step by step, so keep watching.
Rebates. It's super common for developers to offer a rebate when you're buying off the plan. But be careful, because it's often a massive mistake.
That's right, banks and lenders look at incentives as a price reduction.
Yeah, Josh, these rebates can range from stamp duty waivers, they're giving you money on settlement, they might even throw in a furniture set, and it all sounds really good until you get to the bank.
So, as an example, if you buy off the plan for $500,000 and the developer gives you a $50,000 rebate, the bank's valuer will adjust accordingly. Therefore, adopt the difference. In this case, $450,000.
The other thing that sucks is you're gonna end up paying stamp duty on the $500,000. So you're getting hit twice. Although you're getting this great discount and you're thinking, wow, Josh did a good job negotiating, got $50,000 off the contract, I'm only paying $450, I'm super smart. The banks don't look at it that way, and they'll look at it as a discount rather than a benefit. So you're still gonna have to make up that money and pay extra on stamp duty.
So in the end, a rebate simply means that it's a discount rather than a benefit, as reduces the purchase price and thereby the valuation. Knowing this will ensure that you don't get caught in thinking that these rebates can be used as a deposit, and will allow you to save enough so you can complete the purchase.
Ultimately, the reason why developers give you these rebates is to help increase the resale value in their building. Because if Josh has paid $500,000 for his unit off the plan, it shows up as a $500,000 sale, when in actual fact the rebate's at $450, and the developer doesn't want everyone else in the building knowing about that. So it's really for their benefit rather than yours.
So if you're buying off the plan, remember that rebates and incentives are taken off the purchase price, so beware. 2, valuations.
When you're buying off the plan, it means that you're buying something that isn't quite built yet. So you could be signing a contract, waiving your finance clause, and potentially not be picking up the keys for 2, 3, 4 years in the future. So it can go either in your favor and not against your favor when it comes time to doing the bank valuations. I've seen examples of this, Josh, where people have bought off the plan in Sydney. A few years before the kind of boom happened, and they actually had $100,000 or $200,000 in equity when they went to settle because they bought at a lower price and the property ended up being worth more in the future. But it doesn't always go this way.
That's exactly right. The timeframes when you sign a contract and when you settle varies from months to years, and typically is between 2 and 3 years from the time you sign to the time you own the property. And the biggest problem is the market's fluid. It's always moving. So the market you buy in and the one you settle in are completely different. And it's because of this that valuations can become an issue.
The 3 most common reasons that the valuation will come in short range from, number 1, a softening market. So an easy way to think about that is if you signed in the very peak of the market, things are going great and you're thinking, wow, it's gonna keep going, it's boom time, I'm gonna make $1 million. Then in 2 or 3 years, it goes the other way. You might have bought in a boom market today, but unfortunately when it becomes time to value the property, the bank's gonna send a valuer out there, and through no fault of your own, it'll come in lower because the properties selling at that point are selling for less than when you initially signed the contract.
And this is really just something to be aware of, as nobody knows when the peak or the bottom of the market is.
The second point is oversupply.
When it rains, it pours.
So you might sign a contract 2 or 3 years ago when you're the first person in the estate. It might have even been the first tower that was getting built in a new development, so you were one of the first people there. And at that time, there weren't many buildings under construction. Fast forward to 2 or 3 years later, oversupply can really hurt you.
Especially if you're buying in a high growth zone.
For example, if you're in Sydney, think of Rhodes. If you're in Brisbane, think of Hamilton. Those places where apartments have just exploded over the last 10 years. Before that, they might have been a little back alley. Now they're full of units.
Oversupply can mean, because of competition among sellers, that prices fall. And if this is the case, will have a marked impact on your property. And like before, not much can be done, except to be aware of the risk associated. 3, the changing surrounding area. Because of the time it takes for a property to be completed, a common problem is for your view to be taken away due to a start of another development in the area you weren't aware of.
Yeah, again, think of Rhodes. A couple of years ago, it was all pretty low and not much density. Now there's lots of 11, 12, 15-story towers that weren't there before. So you might have signed a contract 2 or 3 years ago and been the only building there. Fast forward to today, every man and his dog's living in that area. So a couple of ways to protect that are: one, get your solicitor to check out the development register. They'll be able to look at what development approvals are in pipeline, what's been greenlit, and potentially who's going to be blocking your view in the next few years.
And whilst there are so many variables outside of your control in way of valuation, it's by understanding the details which will allow you to make an informed decision.
Number 3, one of the most common mistakes when buying off the plan are delays. I almost guarantee you that when you go and sign your contract, the sales agent or the developer is going to give you the sunniest completion date that they could think of. They're going to be like, yeah, Josh, we'll be done in 12 months, it's totally going to happen. They forget to mention that things could be delayed because of weather, because of professionals, because of markets. There are so many people involved in the building process. And as a result, most developments are delayed by months and even in some cases years. That's actually why a lot of times when you sign an off the plan contract, they'll include a sunset clause. So although they might say, all right, Josh, we're going to be done in 2 years, the sunset clause in the contract can be up to 5 years in the future. Put another way, they can keep your deposit locked away in their trust account for 5 years, waiting for the unit to be completed.
So if you're renting, what you want to do is try to create flexibility with your landlord, going month to month. Because knowing that delays are likely, it'll allow you to keep the flexibility to exit the lease without any break costs and to move when the development's ready to complete.
Number 4, changing circumstances. Think about your own situation where you were 2 or 3 years ago. Were you in the same job? Did you have the same amount of savings? Where were you living? It's like this when you're buying an off the plan property. You need to be thinking about where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing in 2 to 3 years down the track, because ultimately you're signing a contract that you are bound to settle and get finance on in that 2 to 3 year window.
Equally, the lending landscape is changing constantly. In short, the banks are assessing their bank criteria, either to become harder or easier, for various reasons, from risk mitigation to regulatory requirements.
It's kind of like the tide. It's sometimes going in and sometimes going out depending on lots of factors. But here are 6 things that you can do to bulletproof yourself against changing circumstances and make sure you're ready to sign a contract when it's time.
1. Employment. Avoid sudden career shifts. A lot of lenders will want you in your position for a minimum 6 months.
The second point is income reduction. So it might be common to get bonus or overtimes, but in the months leading up to you settling your off the plan property, make sure your income's been pretty consistent to what it was 2 or 3 years ago. It might mean taking on some extra shifts and kind of boosting that up to make sure you're in the best spot to settle your property down the line.
3. Higher expenses. The banks are essentially becoming forensic accountants, so be sure that you don't overspend on discretionary items.
Number 4, borrowing capacity. So the banks are constantly changing their assessment rates, and what they told you could borrow 2 years ago might be completely different today. It's important to have a couple of different options just in case your bank has completely changed their credit criteria or maybe don't lend in your industry. A mortgage broker can definitely help with that.
5. Deposit requirements. Lenders regularly change the amount of deposit they need to complete your purchase. So being aware of this will allow you to save a little bit more just in case this changes.
In other words, try not to have the minimum deposit. You want to have a bit of buffer there just in case of the valuation differences or in case the bank changes their policy.
6. Postcode restrictions. The changing credit criteria, meaning that lenders in certain postcodes will require a bigger deposit.
Yeah, and this is one that changes pretty regularly. If the bank's seen a whole bunch of new applications in a certain area, they might make you put in more deposit in that certain area or building. Again, you just need to find out if your bank loves that suburb or hates it, and if they don't, maybe look at another bank.
5. The details. Have you ever read a best-selling book which was made into a movie? I'm sure you remember how that book created bright and wonderful imagery in your mind. Now compare that to the movie. It just didn't do the book justice, did it?
Are you thinking about Twilight right now?
Buying off the plan is no different. The biggest mistake is not being able to physically see or feel the property. So how do you avoid this? Well, it's by getting every detail agreed upon, from the appliance model to the brand of tap, to the size of car park, and even the number of coats of paint they'll paint. Leave no stone unturned. Get everything in writing as the only way to safeguard your interests.
This is a surprisingly common mistake that we see made. The most common one's actually the appliances, because they might promise up front that you're gonna get beautiful European appliances and you're thinking Smeg or Gagno, all that expensive stuff. Then they're putting some European named appliances that aren't from that continent. So just be careful of that. If they've said you're gonna get rebates or stamp duty concessions or some cash back at settlement, Coles Myer vouchers, whatever it's gonna be, make sure it's in writing. Make sure it's on a legal document that's bound and get your solicitor to check it, because you don't want to get to settlement and find out you're going to miss out on a bunch of stuff that was promised a few years ago. Number 6, common mistakes. So We're gonna take you through some of the most common mistakes we've seen people make, and I'm talking about customers, clients, friends of ours that have made when they've bought off the plan over the last few years.
1. Body corporate. Oftentimes these fees won't be laid out until the property is completed. And ready for handover. Many times people look over this. But this is a huge mistake, as these fees can be high, as required to maintain common areas for things such as lifts, gyms, and barbecue areas. Therefore, you'll want to know this before you sign anything.
Yeah, I have a whole video on checking out strata reports and some of the mistakes I've made in this area when I bought my own place. Just keep in mind that the body corporate fees, or strata fees as they're referred to down in New South Wales, often don't go down. So if they quote you a figure before you buy an apartment, assume they're going to go up by at least inflation every year. The second mistake we see made is forgetting about rates. It's one of those ongoing fees. You might be comfortable with your mortgage repayment of $300, $400, $500 a week, but what about all the pluses? Rates is a government fee that you have to pay every quarter. The council rates is a government fee that you have to pay every quarter. It takes care of bins, local parks, roads, and all that stuff, but it is a requirement that you need to pay ongoing. So make sure you know what it is and make sure you budgeted on it, because you're gonna have to pay it.
3. Clauses. Before signing anything, you want to seek independent legal advice, and it's to ensure your best interest is being held to. With this, you want to include clauses to protect yourself too. So, if the developer goes bust, delays, or the property isn't built to the specifications you're promised, you have the right to either receive a remedy or have the contract crashed.
Yeah, I had one, Josh, with a friend of mine that bought in Chermside. The apartment was supposed to be 50 square meters internally. It was in the contract, it was there. But when the valuer went out there, they actually ended up making it only 48 square meters. And there was this whole thing on where the square meterage is measured. Is it on the inside of the walls, on the outside? It's all this other stuff. Having these clauses in your contract and specifying how the square meters are determined can help you from either getting a place that's 50 square meters to something that's 48, because it's not what you paid for.
4. Defect inspection. This is another clause you want to add. Essentially, before settling the property, you want a professional inspector to complete an independent inspection of the property and list all the faults and defects of the property. From there, your developer will be required to fix these prior to moving in.
5. Don't sign anything, and we mean anything, expression of interest, an autograph, doesn't matter what. Don't sign anything until you get your own legal advice. You gotta remember you're dealing with a developer or a real estate agent that's a professional that deals with stuff every day. And unless you're a lawyer yourself, I would not suggest you sign anything until you've had your own independent solicitor or someone that represents your interests to check all those documents.
And on this, I recommend that you don't use the agent or developer solicitor recommendation. Rather, ask your friend or find one through your own research to enable a certain level of separation. Be sure that your solicitor runs through your contract and you're fully aware of your obligation once you sign the contract. Personally, I'd seek the assistance of a specialist.
Number 6 is doing your homework. Before you enter into a contract, you want to make sure you've done exhaustive research on the developer, on the builder, on the real estate agent, everyone that's involved with that project.
That's exactly right. From how long they've been in business to the other projects they've completed, even deep dive into their reputation.
I'd look into the individuals even. Remembering that it could be years before the developer completes a project, and you want to make sure that they're still in business and operating and don't go bust before the end. Bonus!
How can you get out of an off-the-plan contract? The Queensland State Government website states that you have a right to back out of a contract if you find that there's been a change in the initial disclosure about the state of the land, and that the change will cause a significant disadvantage, known as a material prejudice. Whilst each state will have slightly different legislation, guidance and a rule of thumb in whether or not you'll be able to terminate your contract includes: 1. If the builder was deceptive or misleading. 2. If they failed to disclose information which would be deemed a substantial change. 3. Changes to what was initially agreed upon in the contract. And if the developer fails to complete the construction in the agreed time. If you're looking to buy off the plan, you want to seek independent legal advice, as in most cases, the law can be very open to interpretation. In summary, buying off the plan requires a lot of work on your end, as you want to be ensure you've protected yourself for whatever the future entails. A great solicitor is going to be the key in doing this. And personally, I would prefer to overspend on legal advice than flying by the wayside. And by doing so will give you confidence in moving forward, so that you know no stone was unturned. So now it's over to you. Are you looking to buy a place? Did you know here at Hunter Galloway we help people across Australia? So whether you're looking to refinance, purchase, build, you're in good hands. Simply reach out and call us on 1300 088 065 or visit us online, huntergalloway.com.au. Thanks for watching, and remember to hit that like and subscribe button. See you next time.